We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do us well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and your friends if you want to support this college football rebel outpost. If you want to support the true home for the college football sickos with a donation to help us keep the lights on, just hit that $sign where you make a comment and I'll get to your super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome everybody into the studio that sits on the corner. That sits on the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to become a legend with your comments and with your phone calls. And I just noticed I've already screwed up. Nope. I got it. Nope. Oh. Okay. We're fine once again. It won't be the last time I screw up the production of this show. Thank you for you all coming on in early on a Thursday, June 12th. We have been talking a lot of football on PATC over the last 2 weeks. Football. The all Big Ten offense, all Big Ten defensive team, all ACC defensive team, all Big 12, all big offense and defensive teams in the SEC and all special teams and We're not going to talk football during the monologue today. You can, in super chats, comments, and with your phone calls, you can talk football today. Today, basically, we're talking about, once again, we're talking about the House NCAA settlement, what was said in Congress today, a lot of back and forth. I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. I want to hear your thoughts on it. Now remember, on your phone calls, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Anything in college football. Yes, I did see that the Florida State got Brandon Bennett. I had about 3 Seminoles let me know the minute that happened. So we could talk football when you want to talk football. Market text. College football is closer to boxing than Major League Baseball. The promoters are almost as big as the players. Herb Street and Klatt push their agendas like, that's a interesting comment. Interesting comment. I don't exactly agree with it, but a very intriguing comment by Market Text or Market X. Very interesting. The Architect. Hello, PATC. The college floor has always been akin to Major League Baseball. It used to be resources under the table payment. Now it's simply legal to pay. Wealthy schools have always dominated. Another great comment by the Architect. So we're already starting with the PATC family is cooking in the chat room. Cooking in the chat room. Spangler agrees with Market Text. Ryan Willie is in the house. The Hokie is in the house. Let's do a quick roll call. And then I will try to explain what I mean when I say don't turn college football into the MLB. My prof is here. MBM is here. Outlaw Skis, the Georgia Bulldog, Don Scruggs, Bo Weevil is in the house. AMAC, Thomas, Devil Frog, Esmetox is here. Christopher Hooter, go Tigers. Go Tigers. Osceola Trucker, the Seminole Wind is in the house. Preston from Greensboro, North Carolina. Bobby Hansen, go Hawks. Those Hawkeyes. Rod Nix is in the house. Robert Trunnell, Hail State, Mississippi State. You're coming. Mississippi State is coming to Minnesota. I forgot the date. I want to say it's in September. Boy, I had the date in my head. I'm going to go and guess September 9th. But whatever. Mississippi State at Minnesota, 2026, someday in September. Bill G is in the house. Daniel Gygax is here. Han Uzi is here. Doug Steinhauser, go Buckeyes. Jose, fight on. Fight on. Another LSU Tiger. Ryan Brooks is in the house. Okay, so let me, you know what? Let's do this. So everybody is at the same page in the book, so to speak. Let's just go to Ross Dellinger's report. What I was going to do is I was going to have all these posts on X. I was going to post them all up on this live show, and we were going to go through all the reporting. But I decided let's just read the Ross Dellinger report real quick because it encapsulates everything that was being said by pretty much everybody else. Yahoo Sports, Ross Dellinger, House settlement is in political arena now, where there's much congressional debating and sniping over the college sports future. So let's get through this. We're not going to go through the whole, we're going to skip parts of it. And then I'm going to tell you what I think we're at, where I think we're going, but most importantly, what I would like to see. I want to see something different, and I will explain right before we go to your phone calls. Ross Dellinger, Washington. Just a few minutes into Thursday congressional hearing on college sports today, a Democrat member accused her Republican colleagues of secretly drafting the legislation, intentionally cutting out members of her party, and not properly giving public notification of the hearing. Seconds later, another member put aside college sports talk to discuss how President Donald Trump is destroying America higher education, and a third sitting committee member very flatly described her feelings on the legislation that would grant the NCAA and power conferences liability protection. This is something I cannot support. If anyone thought the approval of the House settlement would result in a newfound focus and agreement among the lawmakers over the federal college sports bill, think again. I just want to get this straight. Lori Tarad, a Democrat from Connecticut who doesn't like any of this, a former college volleyball player. This committee is considering a bill that would constrain or roll back athletes' rights, block further progress, and give them little in return. Strong push and a pushback to get to a House vote. The meeting lasted 2.5 hours. A bipartisan resolution is a long ways away. In fact, Democrat members of this committee, the one that controls the future of any college sports bill in the House, launched criticisms toward the settlement itself. Well, okay, but I don't think in reality, there would not be a settlement with the House lawyers that could have satisfied everybody anywhere, in any room. But you had to come to a settlement or... okay. They don't, for instance, like the cap on athlete compensation. They don't like the new enforcement entity. It stands to make athletes ineligible if third-party NIL deals are rejected by the new clearinghouse. That is not true, by the way. Just because an NIL deal is rejected does not mean the athlete becomes ineligible. It means that the player, they're going to have to redo the NIL deal. I have some concerns with the current iteration of this bill, as well as some provisions of the settlement. A Democrat, Clark from New York, I'm extremely hesitant to grant any kind of liability limit on the antitrust exemptions at this stage. Despite the pushback, Gus Bilirakis, Florida, I hope I said that name right, the chair of the House Commerce Subcommittee, plans to soon introduce the bill. The bill mostly grants NCAA and power conferences all of their requests for federal legislation, preempts state NIL laws, grants limited protection to enforce rules by codifying the settlement terms, and deem college athletes as students, not employees. Bilirakis, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name. I don't know a lot of these politicians' names. My apology. I think he's from Ohio. He's a Republican. I apologize to Hawaii, from people from Ohio and Republicans. I do not know who this guy is. He says he is open to considering suggestions from Democrats on changing portions of the draft. He is in the process of attempting to find a Democrat co-sponsor for the legislation. If he doesn't get that, I don't know how, and we'll get to that in a second. Either way, a bill is coming. We're almost there, but I know we can make some tweaks that could improve the bill. We are close to filing the bill and getting it to markups. But what then? Intentionally vague future in college sports. Because of the Republican majority in the House, the bill, even without Democrat support, could work its way out of committee and onto the floor, where a vote along party lines may see it approved and then shipped to the Senate for similar process. However, without 60 senators voting for the bill, it ain't going to happen. It will be subject to delay. So you got to get Democrats on board. You got to get enough of them. And right now, and this is no surprise, nobody's shocked that you don't have enough on board. You just don't have the votes. You don't have the traction. Nobody should be surprised by this, really. If Thursday hearing is any indication, the Democrats believe that this legislation grants the NCAA and conferences too much antitrust protection and halts progress made by athletes over compensation. Well, okay, let me interject right now. The progress made by athletes over compensation was due to the House NCAA settlement. So let's start there. Everybody ripping on the settlement. Well, 95% or whatever of your student athletes are going to be compensated higher this year than they've ever been before. So just keep that in mind. A similar draft of the bill exists in the Senate from Ted Cruz, who spearheaded negotiations over a college sports bill in that chamber. 5 senators, 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans have held regular in-person gatherings over legislation since March. No agreement has been reached, but Cruz seems to determine to introduce a bill soon. Well, Ted Cruz, if you don't get in an agreement with the Democrats that you have been negotiating with for months, the 3 Democrats, this is not going to get to 60 votes. So why are you going to introduce a bill that the hurdles in reaching an agreement include the breadth of liability protection into which entity to grant those powers, the anti-employment clause in duration, long-term medical and health support for athletes. One thing is becoming abundantly clear. Without federal legislation, the NCAA and power conferences and the schools fear that the stream of legal challenges against its rules will continue, even within the House settlement structure. One of the big problems lawmakers and college stakeholders say is the unlimited amount of transfers within the industry, something that evolved into a leading discussion point in Thursday's hearing. This is like the one part where both Democrats and Republicans agreed upon. William King, the Southeastern Conference Associate Commissioner for Legal Affairs, told lawmakers that officials need federal legislation to regulate transfers, something that even some Democrats agreed with. But again, if you're going to give power to this body, which ain't going to be the NCAA, it's going to be the Sports Commission, it's going to be the conferences. If you're going to give the power to the conferences to make rulings on transfers, that is a slippery slope into giving this body more power to be able to create rules and guardrails. So I don't know if that's enough to get enough Democrats on board. I thought it was crazy that kids were transferring during the NCAA tournament, said Democrat Mark Vesey of Texas. Again, I apologize if I said the name incorrect. However, later on, Vesey said the pro-NCAA legislation such as this turns back college sports to a past without athlete compensation and other benefits. The past, said Vesey, was jacked up. The Republicans fired back. We are not here to micromanage college sports. We are here to strengthen it. Okay, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I will provide a description box. You can read the whole thing. So this was not unexpected. If there is any codification to the House NCAA settlement, it's going to happen by the skin of its teeth. It's going to barely get a House bill through. It's going to just get over the 60 senator mark. If this miracle shot happens, that's how it's going to look like. So I don't think everything is lost when talking about codification of the House NCAA settlement. If it is going to get codified, you're going to have to tweak it. You're going to have to make compromise. The Republicans are going to have to compromise with the Democrats. And if the Democrats are completely set against it, especially in the Senate, because the Republicans can ram it through in the House, but in the Senate, this thing ain't going to work. So you're going to try to compromise, try to get more protections with the student athletes. But where I want to take this discussion is, what if this doesn't work? As Ross Dellinger said, nothing seems to have really changed. We have called this the miracle shot. It's going to take a miracle for this to happen. But what if it doesn't? I want to talk about a collective bargaining agreement once again. As you know, on the very first episode, I talked about collective bargaining. I said this is where we got to go. Eventually, I think we're going to get to some point down the road to there. If we buy enough time right now, which I'm starting to lose hope on that as well. But what would a collective bargaining agreement look like? I want to spend this show talking about that issue. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when you put out a plan and it is specific, it's very easy to rip it apart. Especially in politics. When you are vague, you can take the high road. You know, a lot of these bills, right? These budget bills, they get passed without people reading the bills, right? In the middle of the night, 130,000 page, whatever. So people can't read it. and you got to pass it before you know what's in it. The famous line from Nancy Pelosi. Both parties have done it. Once you get specific with the plan, it's easy for the opposition to go on the offensive. But if we're going to seriously talk about the introduction of a collective bargaining agreement, it's time to lay out the plan. It doesn't have to be in great detail. Just lay out the plan. What does it actually look like? I mean, what body is going to negotiate? What body is going to collect a bargain with labor? What body is that going to be? Because in this House settlement thing, in the enforcement arm, and that was due to all the FBS conferences getting together, in how we got to the rev share, it was the Autonomy 4 conferences getting together. But a collective bargaining agreement where you are negotiating between labor and ownership, who is the ownership? Who is the ownership? Okay, let's say we're going to do a lot of pretending here, okay? But we got to start talking about, because no one's talking about it. Nobody is. The politicians, and I'm not really blaming anybody. We got to say how it is. None of the politicians have really, none of the leadership, because their schools are all against a CBA. Nobody of them are putting out any type of vague CBA possibility. None of the sports reporters, the college football reporters, they scoff at the settlement notion. They trumpet the CBA like I have, but they've done no more work than I have because I'm a moron. Like, they're not putting out what would it look like. None of the lawyers on X, some of them being paid by agents. I wasn't supposed to say that. None of them. The only thing they do all day is, this is horrible, this is unexcusable, this is terrible for the student athlete, this is bad, this is terrible, we're going back, we're rolling back, you can't do that. We got to go, we got to have collective bargaining, but they don't ever go further than that. Why do you think that is? Nobody talks about it. Do you know why nobody talks about it? Because it is unbelievably complicated. It's climbing up 4 Mount Everest in a row. Think about the complications of it. Do you even really, do the student athletes see? Many of the student athletes may not even want it. You want to talk about separation between conferences? A collective bargaining agreement might make that permanent. You're talking about a 4-4-2-2-1 that could, here's me. Here's Greg Pflugar. I don't want the 4-4-2-2-1-3 because I don't like the permanence of it. But I'm willing to buy into it if there's a 3 or 4 year look in, right? I never wanted this carve out from the federal government. Never wanted it. Because of the permanence of it. That is still the major weakness to it. But a CBA, you can be flexible, right? I mean, you can renegotiate it. There comes a term, 5 years, 4 years, 6 years, you can renegotiate. That's the beauty. That is the power of a collective bargain. But if conferences are worried about this permanent separation, I mean, why would I don't have any answers. First of all, before you call me and yell at me, I don't have any answers. But I got 1,000 questions. I've been talking with people on the phone about this for months. Nobody has the slightest answer to any of this. Why would the Southeastern Conference, the SEC football players, why would they negotiate with anybody else except for the Southeastern Conference? Let's start there. I could take this in so many different directions. I could literally talk about this for 4 hours, but I want to get to your phone calls. Why would the Southeastern Conference football players negotiate with anybody but the Southeastern Conference? Their representation would negotiate with the Southeastern Conference. They would not negotiate with the Sun Belt. They would not negotiate with Conference USA. They would not negotiate with the ACC. The representation of the South, it's the Southeastern Conference that makes the rules for its players. It's the Southeastern Conference that doles out the revenue to the schools. I mean, the schools got their own revenue, but the media money. The Southeastern Conference has its own playoff distribution money. So the Southeastern Conference football players are negotiating with the Southeastern Conference. Can somebody explain to me why that would not be the case? Greg, you're right, and that's why there'll be a Super League. Okay, Chris, you're jumping ahead about 10 steps. We'll circle back to that. But Chris Kenny is basically, yes. See, that's the problem with the collective bargaining. And there are problems with any road you go down. And that is why nobody wants to get specific with collective bargaining. Nobody. Because there's 1,000 problems with it. Because this is so much more it is 1,000 times more complicated than the NFL, than the NBA, and Major League Baseball. It's 1,000 times more complicated. So I am no longer, I'm guilty. I am more guilty than anybody. I'm absolutely guilty. 3 years ago in August, almost 3 years ago, when we started this YouTube, I would say CBA, CBA, CBA. Collective bargain, I would say it, but I would not go an inch deep on it. I thought that would, CBA. But the more you talk with people, the more it is unbelievable. So, if you're doing a collective bargaining, who's ever representing the Southeastern football players, they're not gonna. Why would the Southeastern Conference football players want to have the Big 12 and the ACC and possibly the Big 10 football players within their universe of labor to negotiate with the Southeastern Conference. They want as much compensation as possible. Now, the Big 12 and the ACC aren't going to like that, but that's what the representatives that are representing the Southeastern football players, that's what they would want. And Chris Kenny talks about that's why you have to have a Super League. Why would the SEC and the Big Ten go for a Super League? Wow. What's in it for them? When you go down the collective bargaining road and you want representatives to represent the student athletes as best as possible, then they're going to do that, and that is going to do what? There is unintended consequences all over the place on this. If you're doing a Super League, why won't the again, I get what Chris Kinney's saying, because a lot of people are saying that, but why won't the Big Ten and the SEC just go, okay, separate and have the collective bargaining agreement between them and their players? That's what that's what representatives of the labor would want. How about this example? Oklahoma's athletic director says at the Board of Regents today, June 12th, that these 6 sports will be part of revenue sharing in accordance to the House versus NCAA settlement. Football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, softball, women's gymnastics. 6 sports. Now, I think many departments, athletic departments, are probably going to do 4 sports, some 5. Maybe some will do 3, the smaller ones. Oklahoma's going to do 6. And the athletic director said, we're going to really get into specifics. We are going to announce the certain percentage of each one of these sports in the very near future. I think it was a couple weeks. So Oklahoma is being very transparent, right? And they also said these 6 sports, the student athletes, are $18 million. Direct payments to these 6 sports. The $2.5 million are going in for the extra scholarships that Oklahoma is going to be providing in accordance to the settlement. Which, by the way, these extra scholarships would not have happened without the settlement. This House NCAA settlement, there is really good stuff, not so good stuff, and I think the really bad thing is it's not flexible. But I don't think we can sit here and pretend that all of it is bad to the student athletes, because that's just not true. These 6 sports, okay, football is probably going to get 75% of the $18 million in rev share. Oklahoma NIL, I'm guessing, is going to be pretty good, right, with their football players. Women's gymnastics, the women are going to get some percentage of the rev share. I don't know how much, no idea. 1.5%, 2%, I got no idea. I don't know if it's going to be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 to each gymnast? I have no idea. But I do know that women's gymnastics at Oklahoma, first of all, it is very successful. They've won national titles. A lot of people go watch them, but they're not a revenue-making sport. They're not a revenue-making sport. They're not. In the free market, in the gymnastics world, the Sooners women, as great as they are, as hard as they work, as popular as they are in Norman, they would not be getting a direct payment, a salary from a sports body. But they are at Oklahoma because Oklahoma values the women's gymnastics. But again, this is under the House NCAA settlement. A non-revenue sport is going to get revenue because Oklahoma has the individual power to make that decision. The House NCAA settlement has given Oklahoma the power to make that decision. Now follow me here. Follow me. You can give me a call in a little bit and you can let it rip and you can say, Greg, you got it wrong once again. But Oklahoma, in accordance to the House NCAA settlement, Oklahoma has the authority to choose the rev share money going to the programs. The Southeastern Conference has also given Oklahoma, all the schools agreed, that Oklahoma would have the ability to decide what sports they're going to give the rev share to. In a collective bargaining agreement situation, where there is a true negotiation between the owner and labor, where do you think women's gymnastics at Oklahoma, how are they going to fare under a collective bargaining, under the negotiations? How do you think they're going to fare in that? Tony says I think a Big Ten schools will have money for volleyball. I think so as well. Again, women's volleyball is not a revenue maker. Well, it is for Nebraska. And it might be for a couple other schools in the Big Ten. But mainly it is a non-revenue sport. Nebraska, it is. It's becoming more and more popular. And the Big Ten has become dominant in the sport, in large part due to the Big Ten Network. The Big Ten Network lit that sport on fire. More and more people started watching the Big Ten on Wednesday and Sundays when they had the Big Ten Network went all out to market and brand and advertise women's volleyball. And the crowds flocked. It's a great sport. But again, under the ruthless bargaining between representatives of labor and ownership, how are they going to come out? How is women's sports going to come out in the CBA? How is Title IX going to fare under these CBAs? These are questions that nobody really talks about, other than maybe they ask the question. Ryan Willie, let me get to some super chats here. Ryan Willie, and I will get to your phone. There's a lot more. We've only scratched the surface. And I know a lot of people are yelling at me right now. Greg, you are for collective bargaining. Yes, I am. But we haven't even scratched the surface on the complications to it. Now, just because it's complicated doesn't mean you don't do it. Usually in life, if something is tough to do, it's worth doing. But we got to see some plans. We got to see some details. We have to have people standing on the soapbox explaining how it's going to be and how it's going to benefit the student athletes. Because we're not getting that. We're not getting that. Whoops. Phone lines are not supposed to be open yet. Hold on.
Call from
William.
Yeah, can you call back? I'm sorry, the phone lines are not supposed to be open yet.
Press 2.
Yes, sir? Hello?
Hello, Greg.
Yeah,
Hello, Greg. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you call back? The phone lines were not supposed to be open. I apologize.
Yep, no problem.
Sorry about that. So, hold on. My apologies. What happens is I test the phone lines before I come on live now because we've been having trouble with the phone lines. So then I test the phone lines and then I leave it open. So I apologize. Caller, please call when after I'm done with the monologue, and then we'll take the phone calls the rest of the way. Ryan Willie, the evil badger. Did you see Moen's show last night? Moen, what did Moen talk about? What did that crazy Moen talk about? Moen would like the Big Ten to go to 32 teams if the SEC keeps pushing 5, 11, and 4, 8 team divisions. I did not see it. I'm going to have to go back and watch it. I think Moen knows that I would completely disagree with them on that. I would disagree with the number of 32. But Ryan Willie, I'm going to get back to this after I'm done with this CBA talk. Thank you so much for becoming a member for 18 months. I do appreciate it. You are hereby officially knighted cloak and dagger once again. Thank you so very much, Ryan Willie, for all your support. I do want to go back to this. But I don't want to do it now because if I start down that rabbit hole, I'm not going to get back up for a while. I'm not going to get out of that hole for a while. And then I'm going to lose my train of thought. And we're talking. So, but I will get back to that. I promise, Ryan Willie, I will get back to that before the monologue is over. I really need to get back to what you just asked. Okay? I just can't do it right now. I agree with Moen. A Sankey would blow a gasket. Again, I did not watch the show, but I will get back to that. Thank you, Ryan Willie. Appreciate the super chat, the support. Daniel Gygax, I don't know what happened, but it's fun to speculate. Thank you once again, Ryan Willie, the evil badger. Expansion crush. Indiana is committed to winning. Indiana wants to be the top echelon of football and basketball. They're putting their money where their mouth is. Absolutely correct. By the way, Expansion Crush, thank you for the incredible super chat. Holy smokes. My goodness. I very much appreciate Expansion Crush. I appreciate your friendship all these years. Expansion Crush knows a lot. Let's put it that way. He's been one of my most trusted confidants. Even though he is a Hoosier. Expansion Crush. Well, I don't know if you watched the we haven't done a spotlight show on the Hoosiers yet, but I've talked to a lot of Hoosiers in the last couple of weeks. People don't know the Indiana Hoosiers got a lot of dudes on that team. They got a lot of dudes on that team. Fernando Mendoza completed 68.7% of his passes behind maybe the worst offensive line in all of Power 4 teams. And by the way, Fernando Mendoza completed 68.7% of those passes without Jaden Ott for most of the year last year, the great running back who went on to transfer to Oklahoma. D'Angelo Pons is a shutdown corner. I mean, Indiana has got a dude on the front line who had, 68 pressures. They got a great linebacker. Indiana is absolutely loaded. They got an opportunity to go back in the playoffs. I can't tell you anything about basketball, Expansion Crush. My feeble mind can only hold so much, but the football team is for real. Expansion Crush, thank you so very much. I do appreciate it. Okay, we are back. Let's see here. The CBA. Again, I think it's important for those who support it, who really want a collective bargaining between labor and ownership. I think they got to come out with a plan. Instead of vaguely talking about it, I think you got to meet the House and NCAA plan that has details that is very easy to attack, but you got to come out with something. And I don't know who it's going to be. Right now, officially, no FBS school is for having the students become employees. No FBS school wants to have a collective bargaining agreement. Now, Danny White, the Tennessee athletic director, there's been a couple others that have said maybe we should head in that direction. But there is no faction of schools that is saying maybe we should take a look at it. Maybe we should create a subcommittee. Maybe nobody's doing that. Nobody is really attacking all the issues that would happen under a collective bargain. How would you even do it? Would you include all sponsored sports? Would there be a collective bargaining within basketball, within football, women's basketball, baseball? Would the SEC do it alone? Would the Big Ten do it alone? Because representatives of that labor would want that to happen. We really need to create a super league. Chris Kinney basically told everybody the truth earlier on. I'm sorry, where is Chris Kinney's comment? Well, I've lost it. But Chris Kinney basically said, Super League. to get everybody under the same umbrella, under the same negotiations. And that is why the Big 12 and the ACC schools would be for a Super League. But it doesn't explain why the Big 10 and the SEC would be for it. They would not see any benefits. They don't believe. You've got to explain to them the benefits of it. To their student athletes. Why would a Big 10, we talked about why would an SEC football team or SEC football players, why would they want to be under the same collective bargaining agreement as the ACC? Why, or the Big 12? Why would a Big 10 football student athletes want to be under the same collective bargaining agreement with the Big 12? Why would a men's basketball student athletes be under the same collective bargaining agreement as the women's athletes, as the women's basketball? You see, professional sports don't have to deal with any of that. There are no complications. Right? And even without those complications, the collective bargaining agreement can screw a sport up. So let's go to the title of this show. Don't turn college football into MLB. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Please don't do it. It will destroy the sport. It will destroy everything. Do not turn it. Again, we know that there are programs out there that are always going to have the resource advantage over others. It's been that way for decades, and it's going to continue to be that way. A lot of it is deserved. Big fan bases. They want to watch their team. They watch the product. They buy the tickets. They buy the shirts. They have huge viewership numbers. So they have more money to spend on their football stadium, on their coaching staff, on the recruitment. It's always been that way, and it's always going to be that way. However, if you're going to go down the collective bargaining road, that means that the ownership is going to want to get a hold on certain cost of labor. If you want to turn this into professional sports, okay, let's go down that road. So, you want to maintain, you're going to be bargaining with labor. Labor is going to want as much, the biggest potential of compensation coming back to their hard-earned labor, as much as possible. We have seen, let's give some examples. The NFL, the National Football League. It is the most popular sport in the United States of America. It makes the most money in the United States of America. It keeps growing. It has tapped into other international markets. The Minnesota Vikings are massive in Europe. It's probably the biggest brand in Europe. Maybe the Kansas City Chiefs because of their popularity and the Dallas Cowboys. But Minnesota Vikings in Europe, that's why the NFL always has Minnesota in Europe. That's why the Minnesota Vikings this year are going to be playing 2 consecutive games in Europe for the very first time. The marketing, the branding of the Vikings in Europe is massive. The NFL making more and more and more money. hint, hint, wink, wink, Ryan Willie, I'll get back to what Mon was talking about. So, the NFL has a hard cap. The NFL has a hard cap, which means that the ownership has had more power in the negotiations with labor. They've been able to make sure that competition is utmost in their product. You got the draft. You're never going to have that in college football. I tell you, this CBA in college is 1,000 times more complicated. You're not going to have the draft. But you have the draft in the NFL. You have a hard cap. You can flip your team. You can be a loser and you can be a Super Bowl winner in 3 years, 2 years. Competition, small market, big market. There is a hard cap on your salary, on your labor component. Now, some franchises make way more than others because of ticket sales and branding and sponsorship, just like college football. But there is a hard cap. Ownership has more power. The union has less power in the NFL. That's one example. I don't think that college football under a CBA is going to go to that hard cap. Because, quite honestly, it's not. I don't. Now you can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't believe the Alabama, the Georgia, the Buckeyes. I don't think the biggest, the 18 schools that have like the 50% of the viewership are going to be with that type of system. Okay? If that happens, they're just going to break away on their own. And maybe they do that. I don't think we're going to have an FBS for the autonomy for conferences, however you want to create that universe under a hard cap. There's another example out there of the NBA where you do have a soft cap, where you have a limit of how much you can pay, but then you have the first apron. You can go over the cap, but there are some penalties with it. Or you can go even above that, go into the second apron, they call it. And there are more restrictions when it comes to trades and player movements. And there's more money that you got to put into the kitty. It's more flexible. More flexible. Then there is Major League Baseball, which is absolutely terrible. I am for the player, the labor, getting as much compensation as possible, but the union dominates those negotiations. They become so powerful, so strong after 5, 6, 7, 8 decades. The agents, the 4 or 5 agents, run Major League Baseball. 3 franchises, 5 agents, they run Major League Baseball. The rest of it doesn't even matter. Competition has nothing in Major League. They have thrown that out. Baseball players, the way they negotiate with ownership, it's an abomination. You cannot turn college football into Major League Baseball. If that happens, if that truly happens, I, for one, I think that's probably the, besides the wife putting me 6 feet under, at a funeral, that'd be about the only way I would ever shut this YouTube channel down. If that happens, where just the agents run the sport and 4 or 5 billionaires run the sport, I'm gone. That would be horrific. So I think in a CBA, a lot of people have walked away from Major League Baseball. Yeah. So if we're going to go down the CBA route, which I'm all for, but no one will give details on it, I think it has to be in the NBA model. That is my opinion. Cap, but a little bit of flexibility. You can go above the cap. You might have to pay a little bit of a luxury tax. Might be some restrictions. Basically how the House NCAA settlement sort of is set up. You got the rev share, which is a hard cap. You got NIL, which is not capped. Right? If you've got the support, if you got the boosters, you got the interest, you can get NIL deals that they're legit. And you can do a $50 million payroll if the support is there. Right? Okay. And now let me so a collective bargaining, in my opinion, around the NBA model could work, but again, it has to be, in my opinion, or it ain't gonna get off the ground, it has to be per conference, per sport. It has to be per conference, per sport. And that makes it because if you want labor to be truly represented vigorously, that's what the representatives of that sport would argue for. The WNBA, the NBA, now that's a bad example because the NBA subsidizes the NWA. It is so hard to make money as a professional franchise. It is so hard to make money as a college athletic department. That's another thing that people don't understand. I mean, a lot of you do, but some don't. I mean, it's most sports don't make it. Most professional leagues out there that start up don't make it. It is very difficult. You see what's happening in spring football again. It's almost impossible to make money, to pay the labor that they deserve, to risk injury in football, to give them enough money for them to play, but yet make enough money for the enterprise to keep growing and make a profit. It's literally impossible. College football players, if they're going to go into a true collective bargaining, their representatives they're not going to bring everybody else on board. This NCAA House settlement imposed certain, letting everybody know that, maybe 75% go to your football, 15% go to your men's basketball. They've given the guidelines. They're keeping an eye on everything. Yeah, this CBA is a monster. It is something that is really good for labor. It should be done, but in this college sports, it's not amateurism, thank goodness, not anymore, but it's truly not professional. One more thing I want to say, and then we're going to go more into the super chats. Thank you guys for your support. Daniel Gygax and Has Been, I will get to you in a second. I'll get to you right now. I really appreciate it. Daniel Gygax, great college athletics has used a baseball model from day one. Though Ohio State has had more money than West Virginia, it's how the world works. Has been. I'll get to that back in a second. Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Georgia, Indiana are among the states who ban public employee collective bargaining. That's another problem. If they're going to be employees, they're going to have to be under an LLC. Your athletic department's going to have to move to an LLC. And then you might be able to do that. Has been, thank you for the super chat. I very much appreciate it. Going back to Daniel Gygax. Yes. Yes and no. You are correct. Ohio State has always had more money than West Virginia. Ohio State has always had more money than all the schools in the Big Ten. They've always had way more money than Minnesota, for example. Absolutely. Absolutely. But if you're going to, what I'm trying to say is collective bargaining, those Ohio State athletes are going to make sure those who are representing Buckeye labor are not going to want the representatives of labor want to bring in as much compensation to labor as possible. So I don't believe they're going to want to fight for everybody with the Big Ten ownership. You know what I'm saying? It's like they don't want to. Representatives who are repping for Ohio State football players, Big Ten Conference, they're going to want to say the Big Ten makes this much money. They should give us this much money. Representatives of labor are not going to want to say all four conferences make this much money in average, therefore we should make this much money. The reason why we have rev share averaging out between all four conferences and autonomy four conferences, because that was imposed from the House lawyers. That was imposed. That was the deal. That's what they wanted. In many aspects, the House lawyers, this settlement for this class action lawsuit had more leverage for labor than a future collective bargaining would have for labor in many different instances, in my opinion. Does that make any sense? I completely agree with you that Ohio State and Michigan and Texas have had way more money than the rest of us, and that's the way it is. In a collective bargaining agreement, I would like for that to be curtailed a little bit more in favor of competition, right? And have some sort of a soft cap. That's what I would be arguing for. But thanks for the comments, Daniel Gygax. Has been. Again, I already with the CBA you got to forget about teams and conferences. It will be a super league. Why would it be a super league? Why would it be a super league? I still don't get. That has to be answered to me. Why would it be a super league? A super league collective bargaining. The Southeastern, the Southeastern Conference football players are not going to want to disfranchise themselves. Those representing Auburn football players, Georgia football players, Tennessee football players, they're not going to want to disfranchise themselves and have their representatives represent everybody. If there's going to be a Super League, if the SEC is going to agree with a Super League, they'll have their own Super League. And I'm gonna go back to Ryan Willie Super Chat in a moment. If the SEC is going to have a Super League, they're going to expand and have their own Super League. And say, okay, let's collect a bargain. Or the SEC is going to do it with the Big Ten. If truly the Super League is coming from, and I don't blame them for a moment, but the Super League talk is coming from Big 12, ACC, Notre Dame. That's my opinion. But I understand why you keep coming back to the Super League, because if you don't come back to the Super League, you see how this collective bargaining it's unbelievably complicated, and I think a lot of student athletes would rather have what they just got in this settlement. I bet Oklahoma Gymnastic would want this settlement over a CBA. One more thing, and then we're going to get to your phone calls. How could you maximize media revenue? What would be bigger media revenue than the SEC and the Big Ten just combining for? What would be more than that? Why would there be more schools equal more media revenue per school? The same people who argue this, that a Super League would bring in more money, usually are the same people that say, great. The Buckeyes would make more money if they just cut out 6 or 7 of the Big Ten schools. Or if Georgia and Alabama would just cut out 6 or 7 of the SEC schools. You can't use both arguments. More schools doesn't necessarily equal more money per school. I happen to agree, if the top half of the Big Ten joins the top half of the SEC, that all those schools would make more money than they do now. But you can't say the top half of the Big Ten and the top half of the SEC, if they join together, they make more money. Oh, by the way, but if you include 72 schools, they all would make more money as well. You can't have the logic don't work both ways. But that seems to be what I go up against every time we go down this rabbit hole. What entity would thank you, Steve. What entity would represent players? Why hasn't an entity stepped forward to replace college athletes? Great question. There has been entities that have said, I think there's like the College Player Association, whatever. But it's very hard to, what is that? Collective, it's like very difficult to, plus, I don't have an answer, Steve. All I know, and then plus, look how many athletes there is in FBS versus the NFL, NBA. Plus, the number, the students, it flips every 4 or 5 years. I mean, you're only a college athlete every 4 or 5 years. It's like a million times more complicated. And that is why, I'm going to get to your phone calls, I promise. That is why, in my opinion only, it is why nobody talks about it. We have spent an hour and 20 minutes spinning our wheels. Literally. Great comments. Chris Kenny, Steve, everybody else. But it is unbelievably complicated. You throw in Title IX, it is unbelievably complicated. And that's why nobody takes the next step to even try to talk about the details. And until that happens, I am out of my silo, baby. I used to be CBA man, and then I wanted a carve out. I'm willing to go back to CBA man, but I need a faction of the schools. I need a sports writer. I need somebody to spell out something, details of how this would possibly work. One more thing, and I promise I'll get to the phone calls. And you guys can all chew me out. Going back to NIL pay for play. We get a lot of comments in the comments section, a lot of phone calls. I get a lot of DMs. And people are always saying, Greg, you cannot stop an athlete from making as much money as possible. You cannot do that, Greg. I was called a communist a couple of days ago. Here's the thing. And we kind of touched on this a couple live shows ago. If in the CBA world, and I know we're not in a CBA world in college sports. I will get to that in a moment. But we're going to talk professional sports. In the professional sports world, pay for play is not allowed. Not allowed. It's against the rules. In a CBA world, again, I know we're not in the CBA world in college sports. I'll get to that in a moment. But I just want everybody to focus in on this. Inducement, pay for play is not allowed. It's illegal. In a salary cap, in a collective bargain, the player, the NFL player, the NBA player, the NHL player, the money you sign on the contract, that is the money you receive from the team. Period. Inducements are not allowed. NIL deals, name, image, and likeness deals, commercial deals are allowed. And it doesn't matter where you are playing. Where you are going to make that money. If you're on that Gatorade bottle, you are going to make that money. But no inducements are allowed. If the Indiana Pacers are looking to pick up a backup small forward, and they got $24 million, they got $8 million until they hit the cap, and they offer a player 3 years, $8 million. $24 million total deal. And the San Antonio Spurs offer the same deal because they're $8 million under the cap. And they offer 3 years, $24 million. And the player is trying to decide, I want to play for San Antonio, I want to play for Indiana. It is against the rules for a player, his agent, to tell Indiana, look, I'll sign for you all, but you got to make sure you find me somebody that will put $200,000, $250,000 in a Chick-fil-A bag. That's not allowed. Pay for play is not allowed. In the collective bargaining agreement, the franchises know that there is no inducement be on the contract. And if the player gets inducement, they are in bleeping big trouble. Now, you might say, well, Greg, it happens anyways. Okay, it may happen. But there's a lot of money on the table. These franchises are worth billions of dollars. The players, the agents of the players, the agents don't want to lose their license. By the way, the House NCAA has agents. They need to have their license. You're going to lose your ability to be an agent. You're going to lose your ability to play NBA, and the franchise is going to get fined. Inducement is not allowed in collective bargaining agreement deals. You cannot go outside of the contract. So, when LeBron James, playing for the Los Angeles Lakers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, in the world that he opted into, again, I'm not talking college, I'm talking professional. In the CBA world, LeBron James made less money with contracts than what he was really worth because he freely went into the NBA association under a collective bargaining agreement. He signed the contracts and he makes a lot of money, 40, 50 million now. It used to be 20 million. The contracts keep going up. But he's made his money in NIL deals, commercial deals. He makes more money in that than he does in his NBA contracts. Well deserved. But LeBron James has not taken inducements. This is where college sports is at. This is what they're trying to do. They don't have a collective bargaining. The schools don't want it for a lot of reasons. If they did want it, we just went over all the complications. I'm sure I've already missed 1,000 parts of it. And this is what they're trying to get rid of. They're trying to get rid of the inducement part. In other words, you can get your big NIL commercial deal. You can get a large part of your rev share. But they're trying to get rid of the pay for play. I will tell you this. For all the people who have called me a communist, if a CBA comes into college sports, if it does, guess what? That college player is going to have a contract. He's going to get rev share. He's going to have NIL deals. And under that CBA, he's not going to be able to take inducements. It's not going to be allowed. It might happen. People might attempt it. And they might be successful. But it will be against the rules. That is very common. People are treating it like it's not. It is very common. Sports athletes cannot take inducements to sign with the professional team. What's in that red cup? Zero sugar. Okay, we're going to get to your phone calls right now. Let's make sure. I want to thank has been Daniel Gygax, Ryan Willie. Oh, I got to get back to Ryan Willie's. I got to get back to this. And then we will get to your comments. I promise. We'll get to your phone calls. I do have to hit upon this. I am going to just quickly touch upon this. How do I do this? Ryan Willie asked the question, Greg, did you see Moen's show last night? How do I do this? Ryan Willie, Greg, did you see Moen's show last night? Moen would like the Big Ten to go to 32 teams if the SEC keeps pushing 5+11. I'm pretty sure Moen and the Mafia show was having, and I think I read a comment on it. I think he said it. They were having a great time speculating and everything. And we've done that here on this show. I will say this. I'm not sure how serious Moen was when he said that. But I will say Moen knows a lot more than what... Moen knows a lot. Moen knows a great deal. And I think sometimes he's trying to paint you a picture which is reality. But he might, he likes to put a little flair into it, like I do. But Moen does know what's going on. And I think there is a lot of potential Okay, I'm going to say this. I happen to have reasons to believe that private equity, and I've been saying this since last year. That's why we did all those private equity shows last year when nobody else was really even talking about it, because I had heard a lot of stuff about how there's going to be the invasion of private equity. We did a lot of shows on that. We had our own artwork made up for all that. And now you're starting to hear the stories of the SEC meeting with Goldman Sachs and the Big Ten meeting with 4 equity firms during their spring meetings. And you've heard Yormark putting a pause on private equity. And now we're hearing stories about schools having possible school-level private capital deals. Maybe Boise State does some sort of private equity deal. Or maybe it's just private capital deal, a line of credit with the private equity firm, whatever. I do have reasons to believe that things are going to get really aggressive when it comes to private equity. It might not happen this year. It could. It could happen a day from now. I would not get too caught up in the reports of Brett Yormark hitting the pause button. I would not get too caught up if we get a report 2 weeks from now that says Greg Sankey has decided not to go any further into it at this moment. I would not get too caught up in any report that might say Big Ten has taken a pass on private equity. I would not get too caught up in any of that. I think, and I'm not saying that's even going to be the reports, but that private equity money, that is not going away. You guys know I'm a moron. You guys know I barely have 2 quarters scratching against each other in my front pocket. You know I do not know the high world of high finance and everything. But I am smart enough. I'm just barely smart enough to understand what has been told to me since last year, so I could give you guys the accurate peek around the corner. This stuff ain't going away. It ain't. It's not. This big money that's coming on in is going to create potentially big growth opportunities. And with potential big growth opportunities, essentially comes with the potential of expansion in the conferences. So when we were talking about the Big Ten, and we're talking about, when I talked earlier about the Minnesota Vikings being the largest brand in Europe, or the second or the third, whatever. I mean, you go watch a Vikings NFL game in Europe, 80% of the stands are people with those Viking blonde hair, and they're going like this. You know, the Vikings are just a massive brand in Europe. When you talk about the Premier League tapping into the market of the United States and how that has benefited the Premier League, what did it take for the Premier League to come on into this market and to work it and to work it and to work it? What did it take for the NFL to tap into the Europe market? I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a couple of conferences out there that are looking at the possibility of getting help, getting on massive platforms and starting to punch into different markets. And I'm very, 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 very interested to see how Netflix deals with or produced the SEC Southeastern Conference. I think it was a documentary of last year. Like, I'm not sure, but there's going to be something on Netflix. I think it's going to be in July. Again, I could be wrong, maybe in August. In where I believe, there's a lot of vagueness out there, but I believe it's going to showcase the passion of SEC football, the stadium, the fans, the craziness, the week in, week out, South. And I think that's all going to be showcased on Netflix. All that happened last year. And I think the markets of Europe are going to be able to have that SEC football branding in there, just a touch of it. So that's just one example. So when Moen says Big Ten should, I think he's being kind of, having a lot of, I don't think that's the number, obviously. But I think there is this thanks, Kenny. Appreciate it. I'm going to be very interested. Chris Kinney said, Greg, Netflix is doing an SEC special. 6 to 10 teams opted out because they thought it would provide a competition advantage. I think you're going to see more of that. But I'm very interested to see the production value but that's not going to be just a domestic type of thing. That's going to be out there globally. And I think we're going to be, anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I've already said enough. This monologue went for an hour and 40 minutes, and it was supposed to be very short. But that is where we are. Okay, I'll finish it up by saying this. If the Big Ten is truly talking to multiple equity firms, private equity firms, and we believe that to be true, if the Big Ten is looking to have a private equity firm actually purchase a percentage of that conference, which Ross Dellinger reported, and we believe that to be true. Number one, even if it's paused, even if it's stopped right now, don't wrap that up and throw it in the garbage can. That story is going to be coming back to us at some point. The reason why they're all looking at that is they're being told that you have untapped value. And I think they're being persuaded. And that is going to be a moment of they believe, of great growth. It's one of the reasons why I have said that when the SEC expands, I don't think they're going to be just dipping their toes in the water. I think it's going to be transformative. That's what I believe. I could be wrong. And the Big Ten, if they're going to truly give up a certain percentage of their conference to a private equity, it's going to be due to where we think we can really grow this sucker. And I think what comes along with that is expansion, a bigger conference, a more diverse markets, hint, hint, wink, wink, and try to develop those untapped market with help from private equity that can guarantee a whole bunch of new sponsorships from certain parts of the world and domestically, and potentially Fox agreeing to or acquiescing to a massive new platform that can deliver part of that content globally. I think that's where this is all going. And why I think the ACC and the Big 12 might be looking at a transformative move themselves, possibly. Okay, now we're going to get to your phone calls. I do apologize for the long monologue. Holy smokes. 763-260-1333, 763-260-1333. Give us a call.
Call from
Rick?
Rick, the floor is yours. I do apologize for the long monologue. My bad. Go ahead, sir.
Wow, it's a complicated issue.
Yeah, it is. I have no answers.
Or is it? I gave you a suggestion about 3 months ago on how I thought it might work. You didn't like it.
I'm sure I didn't. I'm sure I did not. But remind me, what was it?
But it's pretty similar to what you're talking about now. Well, the way I had kind of thought it might go is there'd be the Big Ten Incorporated, which is a private entity separate from the Big Ten.
I'm gonna stop you right there. Somebody right now, Google Big Ten Incorporated. Go ahead and Google it. Somebody in the PATC family, go ahead and Google it and give me the answer. I know what the answer is. Let me know if there's a Big Ten Incorporated, and let me know when it was created, and let me know if they have just recently bought a trademark to a certain phrases. Let me know, Rick. You're on something, or you're on to something. But I think you're on something. I think you're on to something. Excuse me. I think you're on to something. Go ahead, sir.
Well, this is what I talked about a couple of months ago.
And that's why you are on Peek Around the Corner. You've gave us the peek.
And along with that, there could be a SEC Incorporated, and the two together perhaps forming College Football Incorporated. But that's something totally different. I'll stick with Big Ten Incorporated for now.
Got it.
Big Ten Incorporated would have 16 other incorporations underneath it. There would be Minnesota Golden Gophers Incorporated, Northwestern Wildcats Incorporated. You see where I'm going with this?
Yep.
Each one of those corporations that I named, Minnesota, Northwestern, Michigan State, they would be owned by the college. They would be the possession of the college. They would have 100% shares of the college. Now, they might sell 10%, 20%, or whatever to private equity, in which case they'd only own 90 or 80%. But they would retain majority ownership of the Minnesota Golden Gophers Football Incorporated. They're not going to surrender all of it. They own it. It's their moneymaker.
Okay.
And just like the Pittsburgh Steelers are incorporated, and everybody else in the NFL, you pick your teams incorporated, with the exception of one, I think, the Green Bay Packers, whose shareholders are the citizens who chose to purchase. But that's an odd example. All of the other NFL teams are owned by big money people. And such would be the case, I would hope, with the universities. There's no need that they have to sell off the majority share of their football team. It's a money-making venture. But they would need some capital infusion to get it going.
Yep.
And then all of the other sports, in my example, will leave out every single other sport at the University of Minnesota. Every other single sport will remain an NCAA sport. Has nothing to do whatsoever with the Minnesota Golden Gophers Football Incorporated. You can fill in the rest of the blanks. Collective bargaining. Just like the NFL, collective bargaining.
Yep.
You get all the schedules going. They draft from high school. Everybody drafts from high school. If the kid doesn't want to sign with your corporation, with Minnesota Golden Gophers Incorporated, they can sit out because that's the way the collective bargaining agreement is. What happens if you're drafted by the Minnesota Golden Gophers now into the NFL and you don't want to play for the team you're drafted to? You sit out. They can also have free agents, just like the NFL does. Those who aren't drafted, pick them up as free agent. But you're going to have roster limits, just like the NFL. Just think NFL.
Got it. All
Thanks
right.
for taking the call.
You got it. Appreciate it, Rick. Thank you so much. We do have a little bit of a interesting kind of breaking news. Thank you, Rick. Let me get now suddenly I got a lot to get to. Great call, Rick. Daniel Gygax. It was all in fun. We had speculation only. The whole show. Hold on here.
Call from
William.
William, can you hold on for a moment, please?
Yep.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Daniel Gygax, thank you for the super chat. Thank you so much for your support. Great job on Moen's a big college football mafia YouTube channel. We had a speculation only during the whole show. Absolutely. You guys had a lot of fun. I just know that Moen knows stuff, and sometimes he's putting out information in a ways that is beneficial to people, but he can't harm his ability to get future information. So hopefully I skated around that. Okay. Daniel Gygax, thank you so much. Appreciate your support. And Cranky Tiger, you are not a moron, Greg. Thank you, Cranky. I appreciate your support. I'm going to make sure I give that message to the little general because she needs to be convinced. Thank you, Cranky Tiger. Thank you so very much. William, can I just take one more second here?
Sure.
Because I was given something here. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. This is not working now. Suddenly, it's not working. Give me a moment. God, that's not clicking. Boy, what is going on to this thing? I tell you what. Come on. Okay, TJ Pittenger, who I believe has a couple of college football YouTube channels. He's a Florida State guy. I think he has a Florida State YouTube channel, and I think he has more of a national college football YouTube channel. I could be wrong, but I know he's a very successful college football YouTube host. Puts out a post, and it says, at the end of today's Florida State's Board of Trustees meeting today, Chair Collins alerted the other board members that there may be an emergency meeting called in the next week. Let's see if we can hear that.
An impromptu meeting. Like I said, you may be hearing something from us next week about an impromptu meeting, and I just ask everybody to bear with us on that. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Like I said, you may be hearing something from us next week about an impromptu meeting, and I just ask everybody to bear with us on that. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Impromptu meeting. Is impromptu meeting the same thing as an emergency meeting? I would like to hear more of the context in which Chair Collins was saying that. William, thanks for your patience. Thanks for calling again. Let it rip, sir. The floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you, Greg. An excellent show today. You've been giving a lot of information and a lot to digest. Just going back and talking about the ability for collective bargaining.
Yeah.
If I want a collective bargain for the players, and let's just say right now for football players, I want to make sure that I can maximize their money.
Yes.
And right now, there's no reason to collective bargain. If I'm an agent or a lawyer, I'm having a field day with all this NIL and revenue sharing money that there's no point to try and collective bargain. One of the things that you mentioned is that by having the revenue sharing be based off of 4 conferences, players that are in the Big 12 and ACC are potentially benefiting from it because they're including Big 10 and SEC revenue in it. And I think that there wouldn't be any push for that type of collective bargaining until all those avenues of maximizing money have been exhausted. And then at that point, what am I going to collective bargain onto? I need to know what that max revenue money is. And if Title IX comes into play, and that's going to come and say,
Yep.
wait a minute, I thought I could get a full boat on all the footballs, ticket sales, and media contracts, and then somebody's going to come and say, no, you could only collectively bargaining on half of that because half of that goes to female sports.
Yep.
I'm limiting myself. So that money and that would need to be addressed before it even got to that point of collective bargaining.
Yeah.
And then to your point, if I'm a player in the SEC or Big Ten, I want to maximize my money.
Yeah.
I don't want this whole revenue sharing that includes other sports. And you kind of alluded to it because it doesn't include any of the G5 revenue.
Yep.
And if it ever got to that point, a lot of people say, all right, well, let's do a super conference. If I'm the two senators for Hawaii, I'm going to come and say, well, my vote is worth something. So unless you're adding Hawaii to the Big 12, you're not getting my vote. What about the senators from all those states who actually don't represent or wouldn't have a team in any of the P4? And then to your point, people representing the players, if you're in the SEC or Big Ten, you're going to want to do it with the conference. You're not going to want to do no part of any type of Super League unless that Super League is a P2. And if you're a Big 12, you don't want the G5 included in that because that's just going to lower your revenue as well.
Yep. Yeah, it's great call. I didn't want my monologue to go that long, but the complications over collective bargaining in this college sports space is the magnitude of complications is it's
five-dimensional, Greg.
It blows the mind, and that is why nobody really wants to go down the road to explain how it would ever work. So you have politicians that kind of just say, well, collective bargaining, and I'm guilty of it. I'm more guilty than anybody. I am guilty. But now we're at the time where we've got the settlement that has specifics. It's going to get ripped down by the courts, some of it, not all of it. And then you got people pushing against it, talking about collective bargaining. Well, it's time to come up with specifics or that is never going to get off the ground. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. I mean, and I didn't even mention what about the different types of sports.
Yep.
You noted that Oklahoma is only going to support, if I'm not mistaken, 3 men's and 3 women's. Well, is Minnesota going to support those same 3 sports? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're going to include hockey in it, right?
Yeah.
Penn State is going to include wrestling in that.
Yeah.
So does that mean every Big Ten softball and baseball team is just going to go to get destroyed against the SEC? Like, collective bargaining would destroy every non-revenue sports because all the players would go and consolidate in the few teams that are supporting those particular sports. So, I mean, I would say that for the non-revenue sports, what there is right now is best for them. Mm-hmm. But if I'm a SEC football player and we're at the point where we can collectively bargain and I can't get any more bags under the table, I'm coming for all that football money, all the media contracts, all those full stadium ticket revenues, and I'm gonna want it all. I'm not gonna want to share it with women's softball or men's track and field. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, great show. You brought up a lot of points, and if anything, I think if we get to the point where it's collectively bargained, it would appear to me that either the SEC and Big Ten would either beef up to do their own Super League, as Moyen was noting, or they would just be like an AFC and an NFC. And then, unfortunately, many schools, and then after that, subsequently, many sports that are non-football would end up suffering. Yep. Thank you very much, Greg.
You got it, buddy. Great call. Absolutely fantastic call. Thank you, William. Beautiful call. Florida State, Rod Nix. Florida State is attempting to acquire the Tallahassee Memorial Medical Center. I think in short they call it the TMC. No, TMH. No. What do they call it for short? They got 3 letters. TH something something. Florida State is attempting to acquire the Tallahassee Memorial Medical Center as the centerpiece of the Florida State Health Initiative. My question to Rod Nix, the TMH. Thank you, Morris Simmons. This brain isn't working, Morris. Anyways, Daniel Gorby, Morris Simmons, Rod Nix. Is this what Chair Collins could be alluding to? Having an impromptu meeting next week? Could this be what is that the steam? Is that the smoke that is circling around? Could that be the impromptu meeting? Because if it was, that's really big news. Really big news for the university. And if you want to associate with alignment or realignment, that is that could be a page turner. That could be one of those boxes that need to be checked. That could really influence that faction in the Big Ten where medical research is very important. Namely Minnesota, Wisconsin, the faction. So that is a big, big deal. If that is the announcement. Now, of course, hospital and nursing and having a good nursing program and all that is important. But the reality is, I think when I read about the TMH, that would lend to also nurse, taking care. But that could lead to more identifiable research that the Big Ten presidents value. The National NHI, National Health Institute Research, something like that. Morris Simmons says AAU is a coming. Grant, they have to be very careful. Changing the fabric of college football will kill the sport. The allure of college football is different from the NFL. If it becomes NFL light, it will die. I think a lot of that is absolutely true, Grant. Absolutely true. I want to thank everybody who's joined us here on Thursday, June 12th. A lot bigger show than I was expecting. I appreciate everybody. We covered a pretty dry subject today. We talked about collective bargaining, and to have over 140 people on here, wow, I want to thank you guys so very much. I believe we had to cover it because I want to talk about the difficulties of it in detail. And I don't think we covered it all, to be honest with you. So I want to thank everybody who joined us. Ryan Willie, Expansion Crush with a huge donation. Daniel Gygax, Has Been, Cranky Tiger. Thank you guys for all your support, your donations to help us keep the lights on. I want to thank the great phone calls that we received today and the unbelievable comments in the chat room. Unbelievable comments in the chat room. I agree with you, Christopher. I cannot imagine. I don't believe any realignment, any next disruption is imminent. It can't be. There's no way. There's no way, guys. I would be shocked. I would be shocked if realignment was imminent. I would eat a cheeseburger if realignment was imminent. But there's a lot of activity going on, and the TMH, if that is part of the news, I don't know if it is, but getting TMH would be one of those things that Florida State, we talk about it. I'm not going to completely close the door on Florida State on anything, to be honest, because they're too valuable. They're going to get where they need to get to somehow. But that would be a major, knowing the Big Ten the way I know the Big Ten, it would be a major thing. It would be. I'm telling you, it would be. You've got a school, you've got a school in the Big Ten who's not going to get kicked out of the Big Ten, but you got a school in the Big Ten, Nebraska, who is in the process of trying to get all the state schools, Kearney and Omaha, all under one umbrella, so they could have the hospitals be included, so they can get themselves back to upright position in the Big Ten. It's a big deal for these presidents. We talk about how many wins and losses a football program, does it have a good women's basketball program? We talk about sports. But those Big Ten presidents, they're looking at billion-dollar budgets and research. And, you know, if that is the news, if that's what happens next week, I have no idea. I will cover it as big news. Because, and a lot of people are going to be looking at me, Greg, you're crazy to spend time on this. I'm telling you guys, I'm not an elitist. I'm not a Big Ten president. I'm a moron. I'm not the brightest bulb in the refrigerator. I just know where every refrigerator is in every place I walk into. But I know these Big Ten presidents. I know them. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. You need 13 out of 18 votes. It's very difficult to get 13 votes in the Big Ten if you do not have what qualifies as a research that the Big Ten presidents would be interested in attaching to their cancer research and all. They're just not going to be all that interested in you. So, Florida State and other schools are working it. They're working it. They're trying to get. By the way, the SEC would be interested in that as well. In fact, I think if you go Google it, and I forgot to go down the Big Ten. There is a Big Ten incorporate. There is a Big Ten incorporation, and it is with the Big Ten schools, and it was established a while ago. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole at the very end of this live show, but there is an entity there in which the Big Ten schools are a part of, which gives them the ability to sell off a part, to get them possibly doing something radical like private equity. But anyway, getting SEC. If you Google SEC, cancer, something SEC Cancer Foundation, they just held a big convention or something of SEC schools, and it's cancer something, and they're using the SEC brand. They're using the SEC brand as their, not just the front door of their athletic departments, but the SEC brand in name of cancer research. And by the way, University of Florida was a big part of that. Okay, I'm done talking. You guys are bored with me, so I'm going to go bore my wife for the rest of the evening. I want to thank all you guys for joining us. I do very much appreciate it. Keep your head on a swivel. Who knows what tomorrow is going to bring, but I do know this. We are going to be doing a live show. So if you haven't done it yet, if you're new to the channel, or if you're old to the channel and you haven't subscribed to College Football's Peek Around the Corner, shame on you. Subscribe to our channel. Open up those notifications. Turn them on. We can come on live at any time. We can come on live at any time. We could be coming on late tonight with breaking news. Subscribe. Open up those notifications and smash the like button before you leave if you have enjoyed this dry content that we did today. But somebody had to do it. Somebody had to talk about collective bargaining. If you get to an agreement, who would do what? It is so very complicated. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.